Welcome back, Move Mountains listeners. This is Charlie White. I'm joined today by Paulina Riedler, a registered nurse, CEO, entrepreneur. And Paulina has spent the past decade building a bridge between clinical medicine, aesthetic care, and telehealth innovation. She's the founder and now CEO of Spa Connect, and her work lives at the intersection of operational excellence, wellness, and heart-centered leadership. That is quite a place to live. Tell me more, Paulina. What does that mean to live at the intersection of operational excellence, wellness, and heart-centered leadership?
Well, that was a beautiful introduction. Thank you. I don't know if I wrote that or you wrote that, but that was beautiful. So I think, Charlie, what we were talking about before we started recording is how leadership is deeply personal. And if you want to be excellent in your work or in your craft, you also need to take care of the person inside. So as much as we want to think we can just show up and compartmentalize things in our life, you really can't. And you're doing yourself a disservice if you do try to do that. So I would try to approach my work with the perspective that we're all human and we're having this human experience. And if I don't acknowledge that, what's going on with my team and myself, and try to lead from the heart, then we're sort of missing a big piece of the puzzle there. So that's what that means.
And when you say lead from the heart, it occurs to me that some people might interpret that as soft or,
Mhm.
you have to lead from the numbers, you have to lead from the data. What does that mean, leading from the heart, in your eyes?
For me, it means that when I'm sitting down, if I'm having a conversation like this, let's say with one of my teammates, and if I know or I sense that something's going on with them, something maybe is off, I'll say that right away. So I might say, hey, Charlie, if it feels to me like you're a little bit different today, maybe you're distant, is there something going on? Can we talk about it? Or would you like to take some time or some space? I always try to acknowledge where people are at because I'm number one, I'm not going to get the best out of somebody if they are distracted with something going on in their personal life. So, what I've realized is that if I want to get the best out of my team, and I think every leader wants that, I have to be acknowledging what's happening in their life. So I always start with my intuition, my compassionate heart first to make sure that is everybody in the right headspace to be having this conversation. Sometimes it might just be a matter of, hey, let's take a breath and come back. But we have to be acknowledging the emotion that people might be experiencing and how that emotion might be affecting them and their ability to show up and ultimately do the work that you want them to do.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through, practically speaking, what that would look like. So,
Mhm.
you know, similarly for us, if we notice it, you're tapping into it, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason you notice it. And so often we kind of skim over that and go, no, we just need to get to work.
Yeah.
What's the balance there where, I imagine, and I've heard from a lot of our clients that at the managerial level, at least, more and more of their time is spent dealing with the emotions of the employees.
Mm.
So at some point, isn't that counterproductive?
Yeah, I think it could be. It depends how much time we're spending doing that. I think you do have to find a balance. I'll give you an example, though, of how it shows up in my work and in our organization. So we have weekly leadership meetings with my leadership team. Now, a few years ago, we implemented a certain structure to these meetings, and part of that structure was at the very first 5 to 10 minutes of the meeting, we would go around and each of us would say, what's one thing positive that happened personally this last week and professionally? It didn't actually even need to be positive. It just needed to be share one thing with the group about your personal life and your professional life. So sometimes it would be like, we went on a family vacation that was really nice, or maybe I'm struggling because my dad is sick and we're taking care of him, And so people start to share something that's happening in their personal life that gives you just a little more context into how they might be showing up at work that day. And over time, we actually started to get away from that, Charlie. We started to somehow it just started to slip where then we started these meetings and we stopped doing this introduction because we were already seeing each other so many times throughout the week, we all felt like, oh, I already know what's going on with, Charlie or Chris or so and so. And we stopped doing it. And in our last quarterly meeting, one of my team members said, hey, I have a request. Can we start doing that intro where we share one good thing, one positive, one personal thing, one professional thing? That was really helpful for me and impactful for me. And we kind of got away from that. And that was really eye-opening because hearing that from somebody else, how much that was helpful for them, especially because we're in a remote environment too, that was his way to connect to each one of us. So we started doing it again, and it just feels really good to start a meeting and not just kind of jump right in, even though sometimes you think, oh, we're going to save 10 minutes. But you really get a lot more out of the conversation when you understand where people are at, when you can celebrate wins with them or empathize with them if they're going through something. So it doesn't have to be a lot of time in comparison to your actual work, but it should be part of your work in some way.
Just in hearing that, you brought up a familiar sense for me is that we did that for a while and then it dragged on. And when anything becomes too routine, people don't always engage with it at the same level as they did when it was novel, right?
Yep.
So how do you keep that fresh, or is the team, part of me wonders if you ask different versions of that or if it's just the cookie
Mhm.
cutter version every time?
It's pretty much the same, I will say. Sometimes we don't share, maybe if it's, a busy week or a busy kind of month, we might not share professionally what's happening because we already kind of know. But really, it's just, hey, share whatever it is that you feel like sharing with us today. Could be like, oh, this morning, my dog, I took him on a walk and he threw up everywhere and it was so annoying and I had to clean up it could be whatever is like at the forefront of your mind. You just need to get it off your chest. It doesn't feel super meaningful to you, but it's just, again, a way to remember that we're all people and we're all dealing with things outside of this room. But I think definitely it can get cookie cutter. And that's why we had this conversation at our last quarterly meeting, because we all were starting to feel a same sort of the similar version of the same thing, which was something about this meeting format is off and it feels very routine and we're not getting as much out of it anymore. And so we do try to make sure that we're always making the most out of everyone's time. So every quarter we'll ask, do you feel like this format still works? Do we want to switch it up a little bit? And we have the last 2 quarters, actually, we've made little changes and you see them right away. We've already started to see the impact of making some of these changes from the last quarter. Because you're right, it can get routine. You've got to switch it up a little bit.
Yeah. As I think about where you are now and I look back at your resume, looking at, clinical nursing, wellness advocate, being a founder of a company and now the CEO, and it's fast growing in telehealth. What's the through line for you? What is it that's been guiding your journey beneath the surface in all these areas of your life?
Hmm. Well, I became a nurse because I really deeply wanted to help people. That's always been my calling since I was a little kid. I can remember being 9, 10 years old and knowing that I wanted to be a nurse. I think I had some health challenges when I was a kid that actually really started to formulate the way that I saw the world. And spending some time in the hospital as a kid, you really look up to these nurses. They're like angels in your eyes. And they really made me realize that that's what my calling was, that that's what I wanted to do. And so for a long time, that was my guiding light, was to become a nurse, become a nurse. And I became a nurse and I started working in the hospital. And then I had this feeling after a couple of years that, you know what? I don't feel like I'm helping people the way that I really want to help people. Um, our healthcare system is broken. I don't think a lot of people would argue with that. and I was not getting the sense of fulfillment that I wanted. So I actually switched to doing some outpatient work where I was a little more fulfilled. And after a few years of that, kind of the same feeling came up again. I don't feel like I'm 100% fulfilled. And at the same time, my husband and I had started this business, and the business was starting to grow. And we can talk about that later. It was not part of the plan to start this business and quit my job, but that's where it ended up going. And so as soon as I stepped away from my nursing job and started running the business full time, I had a whole new sense of fulfillment because I now had to not only care for this business, but all the people within the business. And so the team became my driving force, became sort of the people that I need to now shepherd and take care of and make sure that we are moving forward as an organization.
That's beautiful. And it occurs to me that, you had mentioned in our earlier conversation the word freedom was largely at play
Mhm.
there.
Yeah.
Describe for me how freedom ties into what you just shared.
Yeah. Well, I think when you have your own business, a lot of people say, I'm doing this because I want freedom, right? Uh, and my husband, he's very entrepreneurial minded. He's always had his own business, been running different businesses since I met him. And I saw the type of life that he lived, which for me was free because I had always only worked for other people. So the idea that we could do this together and build this life together felt like that would be very freeing. And it is. There is a lot of freedom in being able to make your own decisions, um, live and sort of create the life that you want. And at this stage of my life, that is a huge reason why I do what I do, because I now have a young child and it allows me the flexibility to build the life that I want to be with her, how I want, and when I want. And so there's freedom there. And at the same time, I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people think they want freedom and they want to have their own business, but they actually might do better, working in an organization, and that might mean freedom to them. Freedom for everybody doesn't mean that everybody should run their own business. I don't believe that that is going to bring fulfillment and happiness to everybody because there can also be freedom in working for somebody else and clocking out and going home at the end of the day and sleeping a nice, full night and not worrying about how you're going to pay their bills and how you're going to, make payroll and all of these things. So I think it depends. Sort of freedom feels different and looks different at different stages of your life. And so right now, where I'm at, this is the freedom that I crave and that I desire for our family is the ability to, come in here, work how I want, when I want. Maybe it's late at night, maybe it's early in the morning, maybe sometime on the weekend, but now I get the ability to be with my daughter. That's the freedom that I want, and I wouldn't give that up.
Yeah. And just hearing you say that, reminds me of the saying, freedom doesn't come free, right?
Yeah.
There is a cost. And in the country's sense, the cost is in the lives of those brave men and women that have fought and died for us. But in an entrepreneurial sense, it is the lost sleep. It's the heavy risk that you take for that freedom is more responsibility. So
Yeah.
I wonder if when we hear the word freedom in our communities and our families, if we're all saying the same thing.
Yeah, and I would argue that we're not, right? Because for some people, the mental freedom might be worth more than the sort of time freedom, the flexibility of a schedule, right? The ability to, like I said, come home, not have to worry about the business 24/7. That might feel freeing to somebody. I have a friend who ran his own business for several years. He ended up selling it to Fandango, and now he works for someone else. And when I asked him, how was that transition? It must have been hard. He's like, actually, it was amazing because now all I have to worry about is the team of people underneath me, and that's it, nothing else. And there's a freedom in that, right? So now his kids are a bit older. he is enjoying this season of his life, and that's what freedom means to him. So I think you're absolutely right, Charlie, is we have to know, we have to ask ourselves, what do we care about the most, right? What does freedom really look like? It doesn't have to be running your own business.
What do we care about the most? And a word that you came with, you mentioned several times in the beginning of this segment, was fulfillment. What
Mhm.
is that the word you, is that the thing you care about the most?
I think it was until I had a child. I think when you don't have kids, you have a lot more time and you have a lot of space to contemplate what makes me happy, right? You have more time for hobbies. You have more time for being social with your friends. My whole life really revolved around, once I got married, it was also my husband. But before that, it was really, what makes me happy? And I'm glad that I had all that time. I traveled and you do all these things. And so fulfillment now to me is a full 360 of not just me, but also my family. So I'm fulfilled when, yes, Paulina's cup is full and my needs are met, but also my husband's needs are met, my child's needs are met, and as a family as a whole, the family's needs are met. And that means that we spend quality time together. We're, going on trips together. We're having meals together. The house is clean and orderly. Like there's a sense of fulfillment in new things now as I've become a parent. Obviously, finances and making sure that we have food to eat and a roof over our head. So it's changed a little bit from really looking so inwardly at, what fulfills me to now it's what fulfills our life and the lifestyle that we want to have.
How has that shift from the inward focus to the outward focus changed the way you lead your business?
That's a really interesting question to contemplate. I think I think innately it has made me become a more compassionate leader. And I think that it has made me be more efficient in my work and therefore create an environment where the people in my organization can thrive. We have a workforce of 90% females. We have about 35 employees, 90% of those are women, and most of those women have children. So for me, being in the situation I am with a young child has allowed me perspective around what is the majority of my team going through and what do they need. So it might be different if that wasn't the case, but because I'm leading a group of other females like me, it has really given me so much perspective into, okay, what do I need in this season of my life? And if I were them, what's the type of company that I want to work for? What are the benefits that really are impactful and meaningful to me as a parent? And what's the type of maybe schedule flexibility that I want as a parent? What is going to be attractive from a recruiting standpoint as a parent? So for the type of business that I run, I think it's given me so much perspective to really show up and create the place that other women like me want to work.
That creating the space for others to thrive, right? It's interesting because you frame that through this lens of outward, having that outward mindset, but it doesn't occur as something where you're trying to rescue anybody. You're trying to, like, this word enable versus empower comes
Mm,
up for me. The
hmm
creating the space for them to thrive through the structure of the business, through the systems and the processes. Uh, I'm curious how you do that in a way that emphasizes outward mindset or that outward approach, but also builds in room to take care of ourselves, room to do the work we need to do internally so that we can show up externally.
hmm That's another interesting kind of thing to ponder. I think We work in a remote environment. We're fully remote. So there's a lot of flexibility that the team gets in terms of how they structure their day and how they want to work. I know that meeting in person is a far better way to build a team as well and build that like cohesive community and feel good about each other and feel good about our work. But because we're remote, we don't have a lot of opportunities to do that. So, sort of trying to fulfill parts of the what I think is important in a career, which is being connected to people, is doing some of those things. So, for example, in October, we're doing one of our first in-person get-togethers in 3 years. So we're getting everybody to come out to Minneapolis, and we're going to have an in-person gathering. And that's like it's a beautiful thing, and it's something I'm super excited about, and it's a way that I'm trying to create more more community around what we're doing and make people feel connected outside of just, sitting behind a desk behind a screen.
And first time in 3 years. So your team has not
Yeah.
met in person in 3 years?
So a few of us have worked together in an office, the administrative team in San Diego, up until October of last year. So we were seeing each other a couple of days a week, but the rest of our team is all remote and they're scattered across the country. So this will be the first time in 3 years that the entire team is going to see each other.
Wow. Do you anticipate that continuing annually, or how do you
Yes.
look for that?
Yes. So we do anticipate that will continue annually. There was a few things that happened over the last 2 years that made that difficult. The first time we did it was actually we had everybody come to San Diego, which is where our headquarters was. And now that we no longer have our headquarters there, we are 100% remote. It was a little bit trickier to figure out where are we going to go. So one of my leadership team is in Minneapolis. So she offered to plan it, and that's what made us choose to go to the Midwest.
That's excellent. Yeah, it occurs to me, right, that especially as moms, uh, or as anybody with families, that travel for work is not always easy. And
Yes.
especially, I think people often downplay the importance of just getting together to get together.
Yeah.
Uh, have you run into any hurdles with sharing that information with your team, or has that been pretty well received?
Every time we talk about planning an event, people are always very excited to do it. Now, of course, it is tricky, like you said, with families. Some people just can't make it work if they have a lot of young kids or what have you. But everybody is always excited at the thought of doing it. So we have a great group of people there that are, especially when we do get together, we try to make it more social than work. You know, I try not to put too much uh, you know, work time. I really just want it to be fun and a time to recharge and reconnect with your team. So people really look forward to it. We have a really positive response overall for people wanting to do anything in person.
Good. That's excellent. How do you build in this remote environment the structure that allows people to connect and still maintains their freedom?
Yeah. We have a lot of, well, I will say we have some um, sort of guidelines, and then people are free to work within those guidelines. So it depends on the role. So some roles really do have to be more structured in terms of we need people answering the phone certain hours of the day, right? There's some roles where it's not as important what time you're doing your work. We do have an expectation that for a few hours a day, there's some overlap. We have somebody who is in Australia, so he's on a totally different time zone than those of us who are in the US. But still, we have some overlap so that at least if we need to get in touch with them during the day, we can. But honestly, we only hire people who we know can fulfill the expectation of the role without much oversight and supervision. That just is part of the role. It's part and parcel for working at Spa Connect. I don't have a desire to micromanage people. I don't want to be chasing people around or figuring out like where are you. So in the interview, in the recruiting process, we make sure that people are the right fit for the organization, that they're going to do well here, that they're not going to need a lot of hand holding. And I'm much more open and forward about that now, especially as I've learned over the years what type of person does really well in the organization. And we've learned that it has to be somebody who has enough ownership and accountability to do the work that they need without needing so much structure. They need to be a little bit flexible in the sense that I don't care. Again, if you need to go, if you have a doctor's appointment, if you need to pick up your kid, I don't care about those things, and I don't need to even know. If you don't want to share that with me, it's fine. So long as you're doing the work that needs to get done, right? So um, that being said, because we are a smaller team, we are very close and we stay in communication. So we have a channel where we talk about things that are going on. We actually have several different channels. So we have our messaging system, very similar to Slack. And we have a channel for all things about kids. We have one about pets. We have one about just, random water cooler chit chat. And so it'll be great. Like somebody might post a picture of their kid who has a rash and just say, "Oh my gosh, have you guys ever seen this? I don't know what to do." We work with a bunch of nurse practitioners, so always very helpful. They'll chime in, and usually one of them has some peds experience. So, we'll post pictures about people's dogs and this and that. So that is one way that we try to, stay connected to each other, just like you would if you were in person.
That's a great way to use that. Although I can just imagine myself like thinking, okay, here comes the Slack message and it's going to be important because it's work, and it's another
Yeah.
picture of a rash, and just being like, oh my
Yes.
gosh, that
I
could
do, I
be
do mute
abused.
them. Yes, I do mute those channels. That way I go through them when I have some time, some downtime and like to see what's going on.
That's excellent. When you were navigating this move into a business, what was the biggest obstacle, speed bump? You could call it failure or perceived failure. What was the biggest challenge for you?
Well, I will say starting a business was never on the roadmap for me. It was never something I aspired to do. It was never something that I even saw myself doing, to be honest. When it happened, my husband and I had the idea to start this business and didn't quite know if it was going to become anything or not. After one or two test cases, it's going well. Now we've grown to the size that we are now. We're seeing, over 15,000 patients a month. So I think for me, there was a huge shift that came in sort of this identity crisis, so to speak. Now, lots of people think about an identity crisis as a negative thing, but I've actually faced this twice in my life. Once was when I started this business, and second was when I became a parent. And both of those things I did in my life, I had never imagined that I would do. I never thought I would get married. I never thought I would have kids. And I definitely didn't think I would run a business. And I've now done all three of them. And every single time you face, at least for me, I face this sort of crisis in terms of, wow, I'm doing something I never imagined I would do. It feels very hard. And I think when you don't have all the lead up to, dreaming about this thing, it feels like, am I doing the right thing? Is this what I'm meant to do? You sort of question that a lot. And for me, this switch to running a business and managing other people was quite the transition because I had never been in that place to be the one to set the vision. The very first time as I became CEO and I'm sitting in a room with my team and they're asking me, all right, where are we going? Where are we headed? What's our vision? And you realize, oh shoot, I'm the one that has to tell them this now. You're right. It's not coming from anybody else. They're looking at me and I need to be able to lead them in the right way. And there's a lot of self-doubt, I think, for anyone that comes in, right? Am I going in the right direction? What if I take them over here and then we hit an iceberg? Or what if, we all drown? You're like, where are we taking this ship? And who says that I'm the right person to do this? And so, yes, it took a lot of, I will say, what got me through that time is a coach and joining a peer group of other CEOs. That has been one of the most impactful things for me because I think as humans, we all can feel very siloed and alone in what we're going through. And when you sit in a room with other people, especially people who have businesses that might be larger than yours, or people you might look at normally and think, oh, I want to be like that person. And you sit inside this room and you hear about the problems they're going through, and you just realize, oh, we all have the same problems. We really do. Like, we really all sort of all boils down to a couple categories of problems, but they're really all the same. And that gave me a lot of courage, and it really allowed me to shed a lot of these self-limiting beliefs. And that was when I realized the power of stepping into your power and becoming a leader. It required that I let go of all that. Because if I have that, if I have those self-limiting beliefs, then how is my team supposed to believe in me and what we're doing? You know, so I'm not only doing myself a disservice, but I was doing them a disservice as well.
There's so many questions I have after
Yeah.
that. Well, you can pick. I'll give you two to choose from. First, are you threw out there's categories of problems that are similar across the board, and I'm super curious how you identify those.
Mhm.
So that's one you can choose to start with, or we can go with one more tied to your holistic wellness side
Mhm.
and how that influenced the self-limiting beliefs.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the types of problems because this is at the forefront of my mind. There's people problems, there's process problems, might be data problems. There's problems in terms of uh, product market fit. So maybe where is the industry at this point in time? Are there regulations that are changing that are affecting your particular company? Um, though there's probably some other subcategories under there, but those are the major problems. You know, when I sit in my group and we issue process, it really comes down to one of those categories. If you drill it down right and ask the right questions and really try to get at the root of the issue, because a lot of times when you do issue processing, you might say, okay, here's my issue. But then when you ask more clarifying questions and get down to the root, you realize it's not quite exactly the issue you stated in the beginning. It's actually maybe a little bit different. And that's part of the work, and it's part of the power of being in a group of other people who will challenge you and ask you some clarifying questions like that. So you get down to the root and you just realize, oh, this is a people problem. You don't have the right person in the right seat, or you just haven't been clear with this person about expectations. So maybe it's a communication problem. When you step back and you can look at issues or problems from one of these categories, it makes it so much more achievable to go and solve, right? I think just as human beings, we want to like put a label on things. And again, it's very easy to think this is a personal problem, and you feel sort of maybe isolated or like no one's going to understand. But once you step back and you go, oh, it's just a communication, issue, or I just don't have the right person in this seat, it becomes so much easier to then just go and solve that thing and much less emotional. So yeah, I always encourage people to issue process, really figure out what the issue is, because 99% of the time it's not what you're saying that it is. It's probably something a little bit deeper.
Yeah, that makes sense. And as I hear you say that, what comes up is something you said early on in the conversation around understanding, maybe not, you didn't say understanding, but seeing other people's emotions, right? Really
Mhm.
tuning in and recognizing when they're having an emotional experience. But what you just said here was hey, when we identify the root of the problem, we can be less emotional. How do those two work together? Let's say it's a
Yeah.
people problem
Hmm.
and you've got to solve it, and it's the wrong person, or
Yeah.
the person's in the wrong seat on the bus.
Yeah.
How do you solve that and still honor what you said earlier around tapping into the emotion without letting the emotion overrun you?
Yes. So when you have to have a hard conversation, there should be some level of empathy there. So I always like to start right away. I get the hardest part out of the way and I start the conversation by acknowledging this is going to be a really hard conversation. I do that for me. I've heard other people say that's it's nice to sort of prepare the other person for what they're about to hear. I personally do it because I'm so uncomfortable when I have to go into a room or a meeting and know that I'm going to deliver some hard news that I feel like I've just got to let this off my chest and go, hey, I'm feeling a bit nervous, anxious, or, because this is going to be a hard conversation. Okay, I've said that. Now we've sort of set the tone. I might approach it with, and I'm so sorry, my daughter just walked just
You're good.
walked into
You're good.
the room. Um, so I might approach it with more empathy in the beginning. Okay, Daddy.
All good.
I'm just recording a podcast.
Oh,
I'm
on.
I love you. I'll be out in a little bit. It's a good
Awesome.
example of,
Yeah, that's life.
it's
That's great.
Um, so I'll approach it with empathy right away. Again, if it's something like this person's not going to work out, or I'm going to have to let this person go, then I always acknowledge, look, I know this is hard. I'm sure you have a lot of feelings. Um, and try to be compassionate about it. I don't want to deny the emotion, but I do acknowledge and I do have to still get through what we need to get through in this meeting. Um, there's a difference between being compassionate and being, overly empathetic. And I think there's, it can be very hard for people to figure that out. Um, because when you're a people pleaser and you are empathetic, or maybe you're emotionally sensitive as well, you're going to take on all of the emotion that you think that other person is going to feel, and you're going to carry that as well, and it's going to actually make you less effective. So I try to always remember that everything works out as it should in life. So if this person is not the right fit, yes, this is going to be a hard conversation, but it's not going to be the hardest conversation they've had in their life. It's not going to be nearly the hardest thing they have to go through in their life. And probably it's going to put them on a path to something that's better for them. So if I think about it that way, it makes me feel a little bit better going into that conversation. But I always try to, again, just start it by being compassionate, that you understand that this is going to be hard, but we still have to get through this conversation.
So there's a part of me that says, yes, that makes all the sense in the world. And then there's a part of me that says, oh, that's interesting, because when you said that, I went, well, how do you know it's going to be hard for me? Maybe it's going to be a relief for me. So by you
That's
saying
true.
it's hard for you,
Mm-hmm.
owning that that's for you versus that's necessarily an assumption about what it's going to be for me.
Yeah.
So but it makes total practical sense to front load the energy but what concerns me is, are we creating that difficult energy then by putting that out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of tying into your holistic wellness side, this sense of something bigger than us, right?
Yes.
And how we influence that space uh, with our words, with our energy. Yeah, so that one, I'm like, okay, what would that look like? How would that feel? For me, it seems certainly to relieve the stress of
Mm-hmm.
delivering the message,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not sure it delivers that same power to the receiver.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think you have to be a little bit in tune with what you think that other person is going to, hopefully you know that other person well enough that you can kind of anticipate, or maybe you've had prior conversations so you get a sense of, hey, every time we have to have a hard conversation, this person cries, or, sort of you're prepared a little bit. Um, but you're so right. It's a really good point that you don't want to disempower them by saying, hey, this is going to be hard, if they're like, actually, I'm feeling very unfulfilled, and I'm so glad that you're letting me go because
You freed me.
you freed me here, right? I've been sort of just wanting to leave, but not, not making the jump. So it's true. I think if you're not sure, then probably just starting by acknowledging your own feelings is now an opportunity for them to, acknowledge theirs. Like, hey, I'm feeling a little bit nervous. I really don't want to have to do this, but this is going to be a hard conversation for me.
Yeah.
Maybe not for you, but
Yeah. Yeah, that's never we were talking about it before we started recording. That's never the conversation that people jump to, that, and I think sadly, they are avoided so frequently
yeah,
that we imprison ourselves in the story of how awful it's going to be letting someone go, versus really tuning into, like, maybe it won't be, and maybe we just
yes,
rip off the band-aid and do it before we've
yes,
waited so long that there's now collateral damage to the business.
yes, yes. Sooner is always better. As soon as you can have the conversation or give the feedback is always better. And there's something that one of my coaches told me that I hold on to and I use a lot, which is I might bring up something that happened. I want to do it right away, right? Because you start to create these stories in your mind about why the person said that thing or
The
why they
motive.
acted that way. Exactly, right? And a lot of times we're wrong. We're just straight wrong. So I like to bring it up and say, hey, when you said this thing, it felt to me like you were, maybe undermining my expertise or my opinion. Was that your intent?
Yeah.
And that question is so powerful because you're telling yourself, I might be wrong. So I'm going to put the ball in their court and ask, was that your intent? Most of the time people go, no, no, that was not my intent at all. Here's what my intent was. Right. And then you go, okay. And then you have a great conversation. You can let that go. And so I hang on to that all the time so that I don't let my brain go into like, oh, that person just doesn't care, or, they're just whatever it is that you have in your mind, the story you've made. I like to ask people, was that
Yeah.
your
Our colleague Shelby, who we interviewed a few weeks ago, she always says, the story I'm telling myself is,
Yes,
right.
yes. That is
And
such a good communication tool.
that ownership, that it's yours, it's not theirs, is so
Yeah.
critical.
Yes, I love that.
What's something that you're currently having to unlearn as a leader?
Oh my gosh, I'm unlearning, learning so many things all the time. You know, I still, 13 years in, I'm still unlearning how to do things myself. There is a part of you, if you've started a business and you've grown that business, there is a part of you, I believe, that will never die, that just wants to and can, feels like you can do everything. And now our company looks so different than it did 13 years ago. Yet, if I see something off in the CRM, I want to go fix it. I'm just going to go fix it myself. And I get in trouble all the time because there's so many other things happening in the background. I'm like, please, Paulina, please stop. Please don't do that. You think you're helping and you're not. So it is so hard to, it's when you work in a remote environment too, it's like, to me, it's like the equivalent of if I was walking up and down the halls of our office and I see a piece of trash on the floor, I'm going to pick it up. Virtually, if I see something off, I'm going to fix it. But I can easily forget because I'm not doing that job 100% of the time now, that there's other implications that might have. with other, integrations and things that are connected to this or what have you. So, um, making sure that I am giving the people in specific roles the benefit of the doubt and making sure I go to them first before just trying to do everything myself. That is a hard thing to unlearn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, ditto.
Yes. Yeah.
11 years in, I'm deep in the unlearning.
It's
Oh,
so hard. It's like
yeah.
you hire these people for a reason, so let them do their job.
I think that's the beauty of these conversations and the work that we do, right? Because even in your work, it's a reminder that we're all just doing our best, and
Mhm.
there is room to have clear boundaries and still be compassionate, and that includes all the way up, right? The fact that your team says to you, please stop, is
Yeah.
beautiful. I love that, right?
Yeah.
I'd be more concerned if your team said, oh gosh, there she goes again, we can't tell it, right? Like, we
Yeah.
just have to deal with it, right? That would be
Yeah.
a very lacking trust. But
Yeah.
I'm curious if anyone's listening that is starting something from scratch or in a period of transition where they've had a career and now they want to do something totally different, especially in the healing or health space. What would you want them to know?
Mm. I think I would want them to know that there's a million ways to skin a cat. When you start a business, there's a million books you can read. There's a million people you can talk to about how did you do it? What did you do? What are the methods you used? And I think they're all good in a sense that they give you some ideas, maybe help spark some of your creativity. But again, I'll say it, there's a million ways to skin a cat. So if you have an idea and you want to start something and you see a vision a certain way, don't let what anybody else has done or hasn't done get in the way of that. Because it's really easy when you've never done something before to look at people who have done it before and go, well, they did it this way. So I need to do it that way because that's how they were successful. That I think is such a crime because you have talents and powers that nobody else has on this planet. And you might figure out a different way to do something just because these other successful businesses didn't do it that way doesn't mean anything. So I would just remember that you can do it your way. It doesn't have to be the way that anybody else did it. It doesn't have to be the way the book tells you to do it. Do it the way that you feel in your gut that you want to do this thing. And the best part about it is that if it doesn't work, you try something else, if and that's where you learn the most is not from other people, but actually from your own experiences, your own quote unquote failures, right? Just try it. If it doesn't work, try something else, but don't get too bogged down into what other people are doing or have done before you.
Yeah, I feel like the first thought that came to mind there in this comparison advice, right? Be careful
Mhm.
of the trap of comparison. And we fall into that in social media all the time, is so many people are vulnerable in the moment around, oh my gosh, look at what AI is capable of. Look at
Yeah,
what AI is creating and doing for businesses. Am I relevant? Is what I do replaceable? How,
right.
the last question I'll ask is, how do you stay as a human contributor to a team relevant and important and irreplaceable? Even though
Yeah,
we know everybody's replaceable, like, right? But like, compared to AI, I would suppose.
yeah. I've been thinking about this a lot and I've been talking to my team about it a lot. And there's one thing that we always come back to. People love to feel heard and they love to feel taken care of. There is something that at this point, AI cannot replace a top tier customer service experience. So, there's a reason why I don't know if you visit the Ritz-Carlton or some very elegant, luxurious hotel, and you're made to feel like royalty. there is something about that that is very intoxicating. It feels very good. It makes you want to come back. We believe in giving the best possible customer experience to everybody who walks through our virtual door. And there's something about that that cannot be replaced. Again, right now, AI cannot replace that. I mean, how many times have we been on the phone or tried to use a chat function with an AI and you're so frustrated because you just want to talk to a real person and you're not getting the answer that you need? We have real people that answer the phone. You pick up and call us every day of the week. There's going to be a live person. Sometimes it's me on the weekends. We will answer the phone and we will talk to you and we'll figure out your problem and we'll help you solve it. That to me is irreplaceable. We are humans. We crave human connection. AI can do a lot of really great things, but it can't replace that human to human connection.
I totally agree. Although AI is now capable of recognizing emotion, responding to emotion.
Yeah.
So what's different? What's different between AI's response to emotion and a human to human connection in your eyes?
Well, I think it feels a lot different when you're getting that response from a human than when you're getting it from an AI. So I'll give you an example of this. I have a doctor that they've been trying to get me in for an appointment to get this MRI done. Now, there's a lot of, hoops we have to jump through. They're scheduled out for 3 months, blah, blah, blah. There's a nurse that works at the doctor's office, and she said, I said, look, I need to get this done sooner. I have some things happening. She said, no problem. Let me take care of it. She's calling around, she's asking for favors. And she comes back to me the next day and she says, hey, I was able to get you in, show up tomorrow at 9 a.m. And I wrote her a long message back. I said, you have no idea how much this means to me. The fact that you took the time out of your busy day for me, who you don't even know me, right? But you've now made the time to try to fit me in so that I can get to this appointment. And then I show up to the appointment and the doctor says, yeah, I wasn't supposed to see patients today. I wasn't supposed to come in, but I got this text from Jenna telling me what's going on with you. And I said, yes, of course I'll come in and I'll help. I just about broke down in tears because to know that other people cared that much to help me, a stranger, in a time of need felt so good. And I don't care how great AI is, it will never make me feel what I felt that day. So I love to give that feeling to our clients. Like, I will go above and beyond for you. I do understand the predicament that you're in. Let me help you. And that's what our entire team does. That's what we preach to everybody who works for the organization. And I don't see that feeling being replicated anytime soon, even though we know that the machine can understand and recognize emotions. It's still a human talking to a machine versus a human to a human, which is going to produce different neurotransmitters and neurochemicals in our brain because we are wired for that human connection.
Oh, that's a great point. Paulina, it's been such a pleasure talking to you and with you. If there's anything you want to leave the audience with, I'd be open to hearing what that might be.
I think what I would love for people to remember is that we'll go back to freedom, is that freedom is whatever that means to you. It doesn't have to look like what somebody else is doing, and it doesn't have to be better or worse. Your idea of freedom in your life should be yours, and you should make sure that whatever that means, you're going after it.
Beautiful. Thank you. And if you all want to get in touch with Paulina, we will share her socials on the post. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody.